The whispering house. You know that feeling, the kind that crawls up your spine when you're alone in the dark, sensing that something's lurking, watching, waiting? I hadn't felt that in years. Not since I left the house, leaving it to decay in the woods where it belonged. But tonight, I'd been called back, compelled by a force I couldn't quite shake. So here I was, standing before its broken door, hands trembling as the wind whispered my name. The house was a towering structure, neglected and rotting. Vines twisted around broken windows, and the scent of damp would fill the air, thick and suffocating. As a child, I'd been drawn to it in a strange way. My parents had called it the family inheritance. It was an old estate that had passed down through generations, its walls hiding secrets nobody wanted to face. But there had always been something else there too, a presence, an unseen force that watched and waited. As I crossed the threshold, memories flooded back. I could almost hear my own footsteps, years younger, tiptoeing through these halls, searching for something I didn't understand. It was different now, darker. The house felt alive, its shadows stretching out to greet me. I pulled out a flashlight, its beam cutting through the heavy, dust-laden air, and took a step further inside. The first sound was faint, almost a whisper, a soft, hissing voice echoing my name from down the hall. My heart hammered, but I forced myself to follow the voice. Every step felt heavier, as if something unseen was tugging at me, trying to pull me back. But I couldn't turn around. Not now. The hallway led to the living room, where faded furniture sat shrouded in dust, untouched by time. My flashlight passed over an old portrait on the wall, one I hadn't seen before. It was of a woman, her face hidden in shadow, her eyes hollow. For a moment, I felt as if she were staring at me, watching me just as intently as I was watching her. And then her eyes moved. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat, and dropped the flashlight. The room plunged into darkness, but not silence. The whispering returned, closer this time, filling the room, a cacophony of voices that overlapped, melding into something grotesque and unnatural. I fumbled in the dark, finding the flashlight again and clicking it on with trembling fingers. The portrait was gone. The frame lay empty, the woman's shadowy figure nowhere to be seen. I wanted to leave, to run and never look back, but something held me in place. A door creaked open down the hall, beckoning. The air grew colder as I moved toward it, and the flashlight began to flicker, casting erratic shadows that seemed to dance on the walls. I felt something brush against me, fingers, or maybe claws, trailing along my arm. I bit down a scream and pushed the door open, revealing a staircase descending into the darkness below. It was the basement, a place I'd always avoided as a child, one my parents had warned me never to enter. But the whispers were louder now, pulling me down. Each step creaked underfoot, the sound magnified in the silence. I reached the bottom, where the flashlight finally died, plunging me into complete darkness. For a moment, there was silence, and then I heard it breathing, slow, measured, just inches from my face. A single match fell into my hand. I didn't know where it had come from, but I struck it, and the flames sputtered to life, casting a dim glow around me. And there she was, the woman from the portrait, her face twisted into something inhuman, her eyes gleaming with a darkness that made me shudder. She reached out, her fingers brushing my cheek, and whispered, "Welcome home." The cold touch of her fingers sent a jolt of icy fear coursing through me, rooting me to the spot. I stared into her eyes, black, hollow, and filled with an endless abyss that seemed to swallow all light. The whispers around me grew louder, wrapping around me like a shroud, and I could feel their collective breath against my skin. "Who are you?" I managed to croak, my voice barely a whisper. "Who I am doesn't matter," she replied, her voice a haunting melody that echoed off the damp basement walls. "What matters is that you've returned." Returned? I shook my head, trying to dispel the fog of confusion that clouded my mind. "I don't belong here. I left this place behind." A cruel smile crept across her lips, and the shadows around her seemed to pulse and breathe. "But it never left you. It's a part of you, just as you are a part of it. The house remembers." I took a step back, my heart racing. The walls of the basement seemed to close in on me, pressing against my chest. I don't want anything to do with this place. I'm leaving. As I turned, the air shifted, thickening like molasses, and the doorway vanished. Panic surged through me. I pressed my hands against the wall, desperately searching for a way out, but all I found was a smooth, cold surface that felt alive, as if it were breathing with me. "You can't escape what you are," she whispered again, her voice wrapping around me like a serpent. "You've come to understand, to remember." "Remember what?" I shouted, my voice trembling as I fought against the encroaching darkness. The shadows shifted, forming grotesque shapes, and I caught fleeting glimpses of faces, twisted, anguished, and familiar. They were the faces of my family, friends, lost to time. Yet I could never truly forget. I could feel their pain, their sorrow resonating through the very foundation of the house. A chill raced down my spine as realization hit me. The house had consumed them, just as it had consumed my childhood. I was next. No, I won't be like them. The woman's smile widened, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "You've already started to become like them. The house hungers for you." With a sudden burst of adrenaline, I lunged toward the wall, pounding my fists against it. "Let me out. I refuse to be a part of this." The room trembled, and the whispers escalated into a deafening roar, shaking the very air around me. The shadows began to writhe, clawing at me, trying to drag me into their depths. I could feel the darkness coiling around my legs, pulling me down, suffocating me. "Fight it!" A voice cried out from the chaos, and for a moment, the whispers quieted. It was a voice I recognized, my mother's. "You have the strength to break free." "Mom," I gasped, searching for the source of the voice. "Where are you?" "Listen to me, child. The house is alive with the souls it has taken. You must not let it win. You must find the heart of the house." I could feel the icy grip of despair loosening just a bit. "How do I find it?" "Follow the memories," her voice urged. "They will guide you to the truth. Remember who you are." In that moment, a surge of warmth enveloped me, igniting a fire within. I could see now, the faint glow of memories scattered throughout the basement like fireflies, guiding my way. The woman hissed, rage boiling in her voice. "You will not escape. You belong to me." Ignoring her threats, I focused on the glowing memories. One by one, they flared to life, revealing fragments of my childhood. I saw my father in the backyard, laughing as he pushed me on the swing. I remembered the warmth of my mother's embrace, the smell of her cooking wafting through the air. Each memory was a step closer to freedom. The basement began to change. The shadows receded, the walls crumbling away, revealing a spiral staircase ascending into light. I felt drawn to it, the voice of my mother guiding me upward. "Go, child, go." With each step, the whispers grew fainter, the darkness retreating. But the woman's laughter followed me, echoing through the hollow space. "You can't hide from me. You'll always belong to me." I burst through a door at the top of the stairs, emerging into a sunlit hallway. The house was different here, brighter, more alive. Yet the shadows still lingered at the edges, waiting for their chance. But I couldn't dwell on that now. I had to find the heart of the house before it was too late. I raced down the hallway, past faded photographs hanging on the walls, memories of my family staring back at me with hollow eyes. I could feel the weight of their gaze, the sadness of lives lost to the house. It urged me to keep moving, to find what I needed. I turned a corner and stumbled into the grand living room, a place I hadn't seen in years. The furniture was draped in white sheets, ghosts of my past haunting the space. But in the center of the room stood an old wooden trunk, its surface worn and splintered. Something about it called to me, resonating with the memories that clung to my mind. With trembling hands, I approached the trunk. As I knelt beside it, the whispers surged again, swirling around me like a tempest. I could feel the woman's presence creeping closer, the air thick with her malice. "You're too late. You cannot stop what is coming." Ignoring her, I flung the trunk open. Inside, I found old journals, each one belonging to a family member. their pages filled with desperate scrawls and haunting sketches. They spoke of the house's power, its ability to manipulate and consume the souls of those who entered. I rifled through the pages, searching for the truth, for anything that could help me escape this nightmare. And then, in the very last journal, I found it. A passage about the heart of the house, a place where all its power was centered. "Find the basement of dreams," I read aloud, "where the heart beats with the sorrow of those it has taken. There lies the key to breaking the curse." Suddenly, the room grew colder, the shadows in the corners swirling ominously. "You can't leave. You're part of the darkness now," the woman shrieked, her voice a thunderous roar that shook the very foundation of the house. But I felt the fire of resolve burning within me. "I will not let you win." I slammed the journal shut and sprinted back toward the staircase. I could feel the darkness pursuing me, its cold breath against my neck, but I refused to look back. I had to find the basement of dreams. The stairs creaked ominously beneath my feet as I descended, the whispers becoming a chaotic chorus, each voice vying for my attention. But I focused on the glow of the memories, following them as they led me deeper into the heart of the house. At the bottom of the stairs, the basement stretched before me, a vast, empty space that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. In the center, a small altar stood, carved from stone, its surface etched with symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding as I felt the weight of the house's power pressing down upon me. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a cyclone. "You'll never escape," the woman's voice echoed, now filled with rage. I placed my hands on the altar, feeling the cool stone beneath my palms. "I am not afraid of you," I shouted, channeling all my fear into that moment. "I will break this curse." Suddenly, the ground trembled, and the symbols on the altar flared with light. Memories surged within me, each one a fragment of my family's past, their joy and pain intertwined. I could see their faces, feel their love, their sorrow, and the longing to be free of this place. "Together, we can break this," I cried, reaching out to them. I could feel their spirits joining me, the warmth of their presence surrounding me. "Let us end this nightmare." The altar shuddered violently, and the whispers transformed into anguished cries. The woman's voice screamed in fury as the shadows began to writhe, twisting in pain. "No, you cannot take them from me." But it was too late. The energy surged, enveloping me in a brilliant light that pierced through the darkness. I felt the house shaking, its very foundation cracking as the shadows writhed and recoiled. And then, in a blinding flash, the light erupted, consuming everything in its path. The shadows screamed as they were pulled away, the woman's shrieks drowning out the cries of the house. The altar was humming, a low, guttural sound that felt like it was resonating deep in my bones. As I placed my hands on the cold stone, I could feel it almost pulsing beneath my palms, like the heartbeat of something ancient and malevolent. The memories of my family were there, embedded in the cracks of the altar, whispering secrets I could only just begin to understand. As I pressed my hands down harder, flashes of another time filled my mind, visions of ancestors I'd never met, trapped in the house's hold. I saw a young woman with frightened eyes and pale skin, her hands clasped together as she recited something under her breath, a prayer or a plea for freedom. I saw a man, my great-grandfather perhaps, carving strange symbols into the walls, his expression one of grim determination. The whispers became louder, blending with cries and screams that echoed through the basement like a terrible choir. They wanted me to see, to remember. One of the voices grew clearer, stronger than the others. "You're the last," it whispered. "You have the power to break the chain." I closed my eyes, reaching out mentally, willing myself to understand. "What do I need to do?" I whispered back, hoping that the spirits could guide me. "Offer the house what it desires most," the voice replied, each word tinged with sorrow. "It feeds on fear, on pain, but it also craves understanding. Reveal the truth hidden within its walls, and it will weaken." The truth. I had buried so much, hidden memories I didn't want to confront. But here, in this haunted place, I knew there was no more running. I felt the weight of generations pressing down on me, all the lives the house had claimed, and I could sense that it was not simply a place. It was a vessel, a keeper of secrets and sorrow. I had to unearth them, face the darkness. The vision shifted, and I found myself standing in a small room, lit by the pale glow of moonlight streaming through a cracked window. A child's room, adorned with faded wallpaper, the remnants of a long-forgotten life. I recognized it immediately, my childhood room. My pulse quickened as I moved toward the bed, noticing an old, worn diary lying on the dusty sheets. It was my own, the one I'd kept as a child, hidden away after my parents had passed. I'd left it here, unable to face the memories it held. With trembling hands, I opened it, flipping through the brittle pages. The writing was my own, scrawled in a shaky child's hand, recounting strange dreams, sleepless nights, and shadowy figures that had haunted me since I could remember. The final entry caught my eye. Tonight, I saw her again, the lady in the shadows. She came to my bedside and whispered to me. She said she knew me, that we'd met before, a long, long time ago. I don't know why, but I think she's lonely and angry. She doesn't want me to leave, but I'm afraid of her. I'm afraid of what she'll do. I could almost hear my childhood voice, trembling in the dark as I'd written those words, terrified of what lurked in the shadows. I closed the diary, my heart pounding as I looked around the room. The air grew colder, and I could feel her presence, the lady in the shadows. I turned, and there she was, standing at the door, her hollow eyes fixed on me. Her form was more distinct now, her features sharper, almost familiar. She looked like an older version of myself, but twisted, corrupted, as if she'd lived 100 lifetimes of pain and sorrow. "You came back," she whispered, her voice like a blade scraping against stone. "You've always belonged here. You are a part of me." I shook my head, backing away. "No, I'm nothing like you." She took a step closer, her face contorting into a twisted smile. "You are exactly like me. You carry the same darkness, the same fear. The house chose you, just as it chose me. We are bound to it, you and I." "No," I shouted, but my voice echoed weakly in the small room. I could feel the house tightening its hold on me, the walls closing in, the memories suffocating me. But then, in a moment of clarity, I remembered what the voice had said. Offer the truth. Summoning every ounce of courage, I looked into her hollow eyes and said, "I know who you are. You're not a part of me. You're a memory, a fragment of something that this house created. You don't control me." The smile faded, replaced by a flicker of something that almost looked like fear. "I know what you are," I continued, feeling the words flow from somewhere deep within. "You're the pain, the sorrow, the darkness of every soul this house has trapped. But you're nothing without me, without us. You're just a reflection of our fear." A crack echoed through the room, the walls beginning to tremble as the figure before me started to waver, her form flickering like a dying flame. She let out a scream, a sound of pure rage and anguish that pierced the air, filling the room with a terrible darkness. But I stood my ground, feeling the warmth of my family's memories surrounding me, strengthening me. "You're nothing but a shadow," I whispered. And with those words, her form shattered, dissolving into wisps of smoke that vanished into the air. The room grew silent, the oppressive weight lifting. I felt a sense of peace, a release that I hadn't known in years. The house's hold on me was weakening, the curse unraveling as I stood there, reclaiming my own identity. But even as the shadows receded, I could hear the faintest of whispers, a final plea echoing through the empty walls. "Remember me. Remember us?" As I made my way back up the stairs, the air felt lighter, the house no longer alive with the same malevolent energy. Sunlight began to filter through the windows, casting warm beams across the dusty floor. I knew I had broken something, that I had weakened the house's grip, but I also sensed that it was not yet over. There were still secrets buried here, still souls bound to the walls. And as I stepped out into the light, I made a silent vow. I would return to free them all, to finish what I had started. But for now, the house stood silent, its whispers fading into the wind, waiting for the day I would return. The sunlight washed over me as I left the house behind, the door creaking shut with an air of finality. I could feel the chill lifting, the memories dissolving into the warm air of the outside world. It should have felt like freedom, like finally stepping out from under a heavy shroud. But as I walked through the forest, I felt a prickle of unease, a sensation that I was still being watched. Each step carried me farther from the house, yet the forest around me grew darker, the trees casting twisted shadows that stretched and warped with every breath of wind. It was like the woods themselves had turned against me, trying to keep me from leaving. A low voice drifted through the trees, barely more than a whisper. "You cannot leave us." I spun around, but the forest was empty. Shadows stretched between the trees, pooling in strange shapes that seemed to watch me, following my every move. "You think you can walk away?" The voice echoed, soft yet mocking. It sounded like a chorus, a blend of voices layered one over the other, each tinged with a haunting familiarity. They weren't coming from the house. They were coming from somewhere deep within the forest, surrounding me, pressing in on all sides. My heart raced as I quickened my pace, the crunch of leaves beneath my feet seeming to echo louder, each step a desperate attempt to escape. But no matter how far I walked, the trees grew thicker, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal arms, closing me off. In a sudden moment of clarity, I realized the truth. I wasn't leaving. I was being lured back. "Don't you see?" The voices grew louder, an edge of triumph in their tone. "You belong to us now. The house has marked you." I shook my head, refusing to believe it. "No, I broke the curse. I freed them." A low chuckle reverberated through the forest, followed by a whisper that sent a chill racing down my spine. "You freed them, yes, but now there is only you." The forest began to shift, the trees bending and twisting, warping the path before me. Panic surged through me as the ground beneath my feet seemed to shift, the familiar path back to my car dissolving into shadows. I spun around, trying to find a way out, but the forest was no longer the same. It was an endless maze, each path winding back to where I'd started. And then, in the distance, I saw it, the house. It stood tall and silent, its darkened windows like hollow eyes watching me. I had somehow returned, drawn back to its twisted embrace. "No," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "This can't be happening." But the whispers continued, filling the air around me like a poisonous fog. "You cannot escape what you are. The house is a part of you now, and you are a part of it. The final soul it needs." I stumbled backward, feeling the weight of the truth settle over me. It wasn't enough to break the curse on the house. I had to break the curse on myself. But how? With no other choice, I made my way back to the front door. The house seemed to pulse with life as I approached, the air thick with a familiar, suffocating darkness. I stepped inside, feeling the cold seep into my bones as the door creaked shut behind me, sealing me within once more. The hallway stretched before me, dim and oppressive, the walls seeming to close in with each step I took. The silence was almost suffocating, pressing down on me, broken only by the faintest whispers that trickled from the shadows. I knew I had to find the heart of the house, the source of its power, and break whatever bond it held over me. But as I walked deeper into the house, I realized that something was different. The rooms were changing, shifting, rearranging themselves as though they were alive. Doors led to unfamiliar hallways. Staircases spiraled downward into darkness where none should have been. The house was trying to trap me, to keep me wandering its endless halls until I was too lost to resist. But I wouldn't give in. I turned down a narrow hallway, its walls lined with dusty portraits of my ancestors. Their eyes followed me as I walked, each gaze filled with a mixture of sorrow and warning. I could feel their presence, lingering in the house, trapped by the same curse that now sought to claim me. At the end of the hallway, a door waited, a door I had never seen before. It was old and ornate, its wood polished to a dark shine, and it seemed to exude a faint, unnatural glow. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, to avoid whatever lay beyond. But I knew that this was where I needed to go. This was the heart of the house. I reached out, my hand trembling as I grasped the cold, brass handle. The door creaked open, revealing a room bathed in a sickly green light. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and the walls were lined with strange symbols, painted in what looked like blood. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and atop it lay a small, blackened heart, still beating, its surface pulsing with a faint, sickly light. I knew instantly that this was the source, the heart of the house, the embodiment of its curse. The whispers grew louder as I approached, filling my mind with images of pain and despair. I saw visions of my ancestors, each one drawn to this place, each one falling victim to the curse, their souls bound to the house, fueling its power. "You have come to take my place," a voice whispered from the shadows, soft and filled with malice. I turned, and there she was, the woman from before, her eyes burning with a twisted hunger. "This house cannot exist without a soul to feed upon," she continued, her voice low and cold. "I have endured for centuries, and now it is your turn. You broke the chain, and for that, you must pay the price." "No," I whispered, backing away from her. "I won't be your prisoner." She smiled, a cruel, mocking grin. "It's too late. The house has chosen you. You belong here, as I once did. Embrace it, and you will have all the power you could ever desire." I looked at the heart, its steady, unnatural beat filling the room with a sense of dread. I could feel its pull, a dark, seductive energy whispering promises of power, of escape. If only I would take it into myself, let it become a part of me. But I knew what that meant. To touch it would be to bind myself to the house, to become its new keeper, its prisoner. It would consume me, as it had consumed all those who came before. "No," I said, my voice firmer this time. "I won't let you win." I reached out, and with all my strength, I grabbed the heart and crushed it between my hands. A blinding light erupted from the heart, filling the room with a burning, searing heat. I could feel the house trembling around me, the walls shaking as the curse began to unravel. The woman screamed, her form dissolving into shadows, her eyes wide with rage and fear. "No, you can't. I won't let you." But her words were lost as the light consumed her, tearing her apart until nothing remained but ashes. The house shuddered violently, the walls cracking as the foundation crumbled around me. I stumbled back, watching as the symbols on the walls faded, the darkness lifting as the curse was broken. For the first time, the house was silent. I made my way back through the crumbling hallways, past the empty portraits, each one now blank, the souls within finally freed. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt a profound sense of peace, the weight that had pressed down on me for so long finally lifting. I looked back one last time, watching as the house began to collapse in on itself, the roof caving in, the walls crumbling to dust. And as it fell, I could feel the souls of my ancestors finally at rest, released from the house's grasp. But as I turned to leave, a faint whisper drifted through the air, a reminder that some things could never truly be forgotten. "Until we meet again." I took one last look at the house as it crumbled into the earth, watching the last remnants of its dark presence dissolve into dust. With each wall that fell, I felt a part of the darkness lift, like a weight releasing its hold on my soul. The whispers had finally faded, the oppressive energy dispersed, and I felt as if I'd just woken from a long, restless sleep. But the peace was short-lived. As I turned to leave, the forest seemed darker than before, shadows pressing in close, as if the trees were alive and watching. I quickened my pace, making my way back to my car, but a gnawing unease twisted in my stomach. The silence felt too heavy, too thick, like the air before a storm. I reached for my phone to check the time, but the screen was dead, just a black mirror reflecting my pale, anxious face. I was almost at my car when I saw it, my reflection in the driver's window. For a moment, I thought it was my own face, weary and worn from the ordeal.